it's time now to start this breakout session, which has to do with family competencies. And the way in which the breakout session is organized is that you're going to be looking at a rubric for family competency that can also be used to think about staff competencies. And the importance of this is that in the last time that OSEP, we competed the regional and parent technical assistance grants, and also the SIPR, we really had an emphasis on making sure that everybody across the parent-centered network, regardless of who they were had increased capacity to serve all families and all and do their work. So this is about very, very much about increasing family staff capacity to reach families, staff capacity to provide the right services to families. So we have people from Region A, Diana Autin, Region B, Laura Weber, and Region D, Nora Thompson, to sort of go walk you through that. And am I missing anybody else who's going to be presenting? No. So it's just the three of you, the three superstars from the regional PTACs. So without further ado, let me turn it over to them and to discuss the session. Thank you.
Thank you, Carmen.
Great. And Laura, you're going to show your screen?
No. Sorry about that. I thought the
I can share mine. I will share mine.
Thank you, Nora. So thank you everyone for your patience. This is our first kickoff, and as you can see, like first time of anything, we are experiencing some glitches. So I hope, thank you for your patience, but also I hope you can learn from our glitches. We promise you by next Tuesday, we will have most of them all ironed out. So we really do appreciate your patience as we move this forward.
Show presenter view.
We need to go back to the very first slide also.
Yeah, there's that. Don't read ahead, folks.
So I'm actually just gonna start off to tell you a little bit about what we want you to learn from the Enhancing Staff Competencies to Build Parent-Family Capacity workshop that we're doing today. We want to let you know that there are so many people who have registered not only for the conference overall, but for our session, that we won't be able to answer all of your questions. And we want you to email us so that we can answer them after the session. Is there a way to see this in a way that there's only the slide? Great.
Very cool. Great.
So, so I just want to let you know, even though my name is Diana Autin, for this session, my name is Flora, because we have Flora, Laura, and Nora that are your presenters. In this workshop, we are going to introduce a new tool that was developed by the Regional Parent Technical Assistance Centers that crosswalks key family capacities with the staff attitudes, knowledge, and skills needed to help families achieve those capacities. We will also discuss why it's important to know and measure how effective staff is in sharing information with families and youth in ways that enhance their capacity, and strategies for directors and supervisors to track and measure staff effectiveness. Our intention is to equip you with effective ways to build your staff's ability to build family and youth competence and confidence so that they are able to not just give families and youth content and process information, but also make sure that the families and youth can gain the ability to do it on their own the next time or the time after that. Next slide. This presentation is going to look at the why, the what, and the how of the work of parent centers, connecting the knowledge of early intervention, education, and transition laws and best practices with effective ways to share that knowledge and skill so that families and youth learn how to use it to become effective advocates. We know that parent centers are doing a lot of work to prepare their staff to work effectively with families and youth that we serve. As Carmen has mentioned, OSEP has taken a greater interest in staff development, and we applaud that focus. Parent centers are very skilled in ensuring that their staff have a good understanding of the laws including the content about what is required and the processes that are involved in early intervention, special education, and transition, as well as best practices. This new tool seeks to explicitly combine the knowledge around the law and best practices with the attitudes, knowledge, and skills that Parent Center staff need to enable families and youth to use that information effectively and on their own. So why? Why do we care about this? There are several reasons why it's important to focus on building the staff attitudes, knowledge, and skills needed to help parents and youth advocate and partner in these different processes. The first reason is that it's explicitly required under IDEA, which indicates that parent centers promote the effective education of children with disabilities by strengthening the role and responsibility of parents and ensuring that families have meaningful opportunities to participate in the education of their children at school and at home. And it's clear from the law itself that the goal of parent centers is to enhance the knowledge, skills, confidence, and competence of parents and youth to partner and advocate, not to build dependence on us as parent centers. Next slide. So why else do we want to make sure that, I think we went perhaps one slide too soon?
No, we're still on the why and the why else. Remember, we adjusted it about the attitude, skills, and
Yes.
knowledge. We were gonna.
Yeah, all right. So another reason is that we have to clearly understand what parents need to know and be able to do in order to become their children's best advocates, what our staff need to know and be able to do, and what attitudes they need to bring to get parents there, and what we need to do to train, supervise, and support our staff to ensure they have and use the attitudes, knowledge, and skills to get the job done. And so to develop this tool, we started with a parent empowerment rubric that Nora Thompson had developed to use in her parent center. And then we compared and crosswalked it with staff competencies that Laura Weber had developed to use with the staff at her parent center. So now we're going to start by having Nora review the parent empowerment rubric.
Okay, so parents come to parent centers with a wide variety of needs, different learning styles, knowledge and skills that range from absolutely no knowledge to very knowledgeable, and from no skills to very skilled. Staff has to assess that parent or youth knowledge and skills, their capacity, so that they can then tailor the individualized information, resources, and strategies they share and how they share it. Once the staff determines the parent-youth current status, then they can focus on how to help them move on to the next level. I developed this parent capacity building rubric. I originally titled the Family Empowerment Rubric because I really wanted to have a visual or graphic representation of how a family could progress with all the steps and levels going from least knowledgeable to very knowledgeable. And I also wanted to see what are all the areas that they had to gain knowledge in. I knew that there was going to be multiple levels to it. I knew families would be all over the place when they come to a parent center. For example, you could have a family that's done a lot of research and is pretty knowledgeable about IDEA and parent rights, but doesn't have any good basic information on good communication skills, or they don't understand chain of command. So I worked on this as a rubric, and then Diana was able to tie it, when you see it, you'll understand, to tie it to the elements of our parent center work into the language of our proposals. And as you see, there's a scale for each of the elements, starting with least knowledgeable to moving up to exemplary. So when a family contacts you, you need to use good listening skills and ask clarifying questions to make an assessment about what's needed and to see where to start and help that parent identify what's the most pressing issue right now. And in doing these conversations with families, these interviews with families, there's always going to be some history shared. This skill of assessing the family where they are currently right now is critical. And as we continue this presentation, you're going to see how it ties to the staff competencies. Depending on several factors, this interaction with the family might be the only one. So you really have to be sharp on how can you assist the family to move just however much they can across that line, even a tiny bit to increase their capacity. So, and when you wrap up an interaction, you want to check for understanding and see what their next step might be. And this will also give you a clue as to whether or not the information that you shared was going to be effective and what they needed. So sometimes you have multiple interactions with families, and this rubric can guide you through next steps. So taking good notes are important. So now I'm going to show you the actual this is the top part of the rubric. It's one of the handouts in there that you can download. And as you can see, it goes from the key elements, which is understanding. It starts with understanding your child's disability and needs. Here's the RFA, the RFP source, and it's that change in knowledge. It starts that non-empowered family with little or no information, and it moves to the right, going with partial, and they're starting to learn about it, to basic understanding about what's needed, and then going forward to expanding the understanding of the assessments to identify the needs, and then finally exemplary uses that information to across developmental phases and impact on needs. So taking a look at your copy of, you'll see that there's several more categories, key elements, and those are, oh, we don't have that slide. I have it on my notes here, sorry. Understands the child's abilities, navigating systems, understanding early intervention, special ed, and transition to adult life, understanding parental rights and safeguards, organizing records and information, engaging in parent-professional collaboration, effective communication, understanding various perspectives and interests, a very critical one, and has the ability to evaluate effectiveness of the child's services. And last but not least, especially in this day and age, is practicing self-care. And I know I just rattled off a big giant list, but be thinking about, did we miss anything? So, excuse me. Now we're going to have a scenario where you will hear an example of, say, an interaction with a family, and be thinking about it in terms of this first row of understanding that child's disability and needs. So I'm going to turn it over to Laura to do this scenario.
So this is Flora. Good morning, Ms. Jones. My name is Flora. How can I help you today?
I wish it was a good morning. I'm not sure exactly what your organization does, but my friend told me about you and I need some help. I'm really worried about my son, Tim. He's going into the 4th grade and he's way behind in his reading. And now he's saying he's dumb and he's stupid and he doesn't even really want to go back to school. You know, I have other children. Tim's my 3rd child, and the others have done fine in school, but it seems like something's just wrong. He wasn't catching on as early as 1st grade. I talked to his teacher, and that, you know, she said kids learn at different rates, not to worry. And then she asked me if I had read to him when he was younger. I read to all my children, and Tim loved the stories. He's got a wonderful imagination and he's made some great stories on his own. He loves drawing and his art, but that's not really, I'm getting off track. That's not really why I called you. So then he was in 2nd grade and, you know, things didn't get any better. And I kept asking, what can be done? You know, and I was told, make sure he had a quiet place to do his lessons at home, and I should spend more extra time listening to him and to read aloud. Well, he hated that. He told me once that the letters seemed all squiggly and they didn't make any sense. You know what? It kills me. He's my son and I love him. And I'm just watching him struggle. I've seen this big change in my sunny, happy boy in 3rd grade. Tim was either clowning around or putting his head down on the desk. You know, he wasn't engaged with his learning at all. I begged the teacher for some help and even talked to the principal, who told me that They weren't testing kids anymore this school year. I know I can't wait any longer for somebody to help them. I'm losing my son. I don't know what to do. I don't know I just don't know how to help him. It's breaking my heart. And I'm so angry at myself for letting all this time go by without doing something. I feel so useless.
So now we want to ask you to go back, please. We have to do the debrief. So think, go back, not forward, back, right there. So based on the rubric of understanding the child's abilities, disabilities, strengths, and needs, what capacities does the parent display and what capacities does the parent seem to lack? Just put it in the chat and we'll just say a few. So what are some capacities based on this scenario that the parent seems to display? So Carmen says she's observant of her children. Patricia said she's involved in her child's education. She displays an understanding of her son, some of his strengths and weaknesses. The parent had good observations about Tim's interests.
Mm-hmm.
Able to convey to others what's going on. Complimentary of her son's abilities. Beginning to advocate but needs more support and doesn't understand her strengths. So let's now that kind of segues into what are some of the capacities that the parent seems to lack. So she doesn't necessarily understand her own strengths. Even though she believes in her son and has hope for his future, she's starting to feel like she really doesn't know what to do next. So what other capacities does the parent seem to lack that the parent center could help? Doesn't know the special ed process yet, so that's new to her.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's important. And doesn't really understand how schools do or are supposed to do evaluations, needs help with navigation. Let's do one or two more. Doesn't know about assessments or evals, and certainly doesn't know the special education vocabulary or her rights or the rights of her son. So that's great. So now we can go on to the next slide, and we'll come back to this scenario a little bit later.
So we're going to switch gears. It's going to feel like we're switching gears a little bit, but we're not really, because we'll tie this all together for you in the end. So we're going to talk a bit about competencies, effective learning competencies, and why we would want to even go down that road when we're developing trainings for our staff and when we're trying to ensure that our staff are able to connect with families and to be able to really provide training opportunities that helps us meet everything that's laid out in IDEA. All right, and oftentimes when we talk about competencies, people groan or roll their eyes, but we all know what they are, right? So just think about what IEP goals are and how they're written. So, you know, they're written as SMART goals, and really competencies are the same. It really is just a different word. So they tell us what to look for that someone has mastered and the time frame by which they have mastered that. So for example, if we want staff to do a specific job, like provide information, resources, and support to families, we really must detail exactly what that looks like and then how we're going to measure it. So, you know, as many of you, our job descriptions may say, respond to calls from families. Well, yeah, that's exactly what they have to do. But what those responses look like is where we really get into the competencies. So next slide, please, Nora. So without competencies, when we're doing training with staff or with other people, we often tend up to what Nora calls the vomit method of delivery, right? So we take everything that's in our head and we immediately deliver it out of our mouth, whether it meets the needs or not. because we're trying to cover all of our bases with as much as we can. And when talking to families, we often, or staff, anticipate incorrectly what their needs are. There's often the abdicating parent or the hero complex, like we can solve all your problems for you. Or we overstep our boundaries, right? Because boundaries are critical in the work that we do. So as we go through the rest of this, we'll give some real examples of some of these and how learning competencies can really help us make sure that our staff training ensures that staff get what they need and can work effectively with families to build their competency and confidence in navigating systems. Next slide, please. Thanks, Nora. So when we talk about measurable learning competencies, right, this work comes from research done back in the 50s by Malcolm Knowles on adult learning, and then has just been added upon over the years. We're really looking at staff being able to have three competencies, right? So the first one is attitude. And that is how the staff will act. The second one is skills. What will they be able to actually do? And the third one is knowledge. What do they know? So these are all measurable. So when we think about attitude, those are what we call the soft skills, although often they're much harder than the other skills. So they'll be able to act with empathy. They will be able to choose to be culturally responsive. They will choose to listen effectively. And I just see that Deb put something in the chat about listening well, the aid. So sorry, I didn't see all of that, but it's a good book she referenced. So I think most of us are pretty good, parent center staff, and you're doing a good job training staff. What we're really hoping to layer on, that's what you need, right? Another layer, but to layer on another component to that, to really ensure that the staff have training and a skill set in all three of these. All right, next slide. All right, so if we go back to the RFP, so the RFP for the Parent Center PTI, right? So that actually has some of these knowledge and skills in there, these competencies already laid out for us. So navigate systems. Well, navigate is a skill, right? But you can't navigate it unless you have the knowledge of what the systems are. Understand educational and service options. It's knowledge. Strengthen collaboration with professionals, skills. And so by overlaying this rubric that Nora created with the competencies, we really begin to see how they tie together. And so with staff having the competencies they need, they actually can more easily accomplish all the things that are laid out in the rubric that Nora created. And if we go to the next slide, please, is really, I know you can't see this, but you have it in your handouts. It's gigantic, so we couldn't fit it all on the screen. But really what it does, if you look at, understands the family capacities, understands child's abilities, disabilities, strengths, and needs, right? So one of the staff attitudes would be that they value the expertise of the family, right? They choose to ask questions that increase information from the families about their child's disabilities, right? So knowledge, again, can the same understand child's abilities, disabilities, strengths, and needs. A knowledge competency that would help ensure that we get there is if staff have the ability to locate resources. Can they explain why families have the right to make choices in services that best meet their needs? And then staff skills. So can staff assess families' understanding and ability of information? And can they implement strategies to engage families in the process of problem solving? So you begin to see how these things seem to work together. And what we often have is, what people often say is, well, how do we measure those? And Diana's going to talk a little bit later about how you measure that, because we have to be able to measure whether or not their competencies are met. Because when we measure it, it gives us an opportunity for better supervision, more targeted training and support, and really helping staff members know key areas for continued growth.
So Laura, before you go to the next slide, I just want to add one thing, which is that, so this is that crosswalk. On the left side, it takes every single one of the components of the Parent Empowerment Rubric that, that Nora developed. And then as Laura just walked you through staff attitudes, knowledge, skills, and then we're going to talk about measurement tools. So there's specific staff attitudes, specific staff knowledge, and specific staff skills that we, as the RP TACs and PTI directors, believe connect with the specific parent family capacity that's listed on the left side. So when you do access your handouts, you'll be able to see the chart that takes every single parent family capacity and then puts the core staff competencies that connect to that. So thank you.
Thank you, Diana, Flora. And that's exactly correct. So it's a big chart, and we've missed things, right? This is our first time out the gate with this as well. So we are going to ask for your help, because we know we have not included everything, but next slide.
Do you need next slide?
Yes, please. Okay. So how do we get there? So please know this is not assumption that you don't have staff competencies. It isn't. We're building on a series of work we've taken from lots of places. So how does one get there in terms of making sure that there's a competency-based staff training that helps us meet what IDA has set forward that we need to meet? Is that we identify the competencies that the staff in your center need to know. And then you communicate these competencies, right? So we're going to start putting them in our job descriptions, in our evaluation protocols, so that everything is becoming, our evaluations are competency-based, and people coming in to take a job know what the competencies are. And then you create a training plan to enhance the competencies that you see you may need to shore up in staff. And then you implement the training plan. And as a longtime adult educator, training is never one and done, right? We just forget. Other things get in the way. So that's why ongoing is in parentheses, because training is ongoing. Okay, and the next slide, please, Nora. I think this is Diana.
Yep, this is Flora. And so we're going to talk a little bit about the measurement tools and strategies that we've included in the crosswalk. Each of the staff competencies in the chart or crosswalk provides some key measurement tools and strategies to be able to identify the extent to which your staff is exhibiting the competencies that are affiliated with each of the parent capacities. These are all good practices as part of your ongoing supervision of staff, but they are particularly useful in this situation. They include observations, observing your staff as they work with families and youth to see the extent to which their interaction involves the attitudes, knowledge, and skills needed to enhance parent and youth capacities. Now, during this pandemic, you may not be able to observe your staff directly. So listening to them virtually during a phone conversation might be able to help you achieve what you otherwise might achieve through an observation. Review of case notes is another valuable strategy. Did the staff person tell the parent what to do? Or did they explain the various options and walk the parent through the process of deciding what they want to do and how to do it? Of course, you will want to have a debrief of the call or the meeting with the family with your staff person so that they have a clear sense of what you are looking for, whether or not they meet your expectations, and what they could do differently in the future. Looking at survey responses from families, for example, answers the questions: did you understand the information you were provided, and do you feel prepared to use it? That's clearly capacity building. Those are capacities that families need to be able to have. And is your staff helping them achieve those capacities? Assessment of knowledge during an oral or written test is another strategy. Scenarios and role plays as part of your staff orientation or onboarding process and as part of ongoing staff development is an effective approach, and we're going to do in the second part of the scenario shortly. Discussing performance in these areas during annual performance review is key. And finally, having staff complete Parent Center Learning Hub courses where appropriate and seeing how staff perform is a great strategy, particularly to measure knowledge.
Right.
So
Diana,
I'm sorry.
that's all right. So as Diana just laid out, and from the previous slides, you can see that this model starts all the way with once the competencies are identified, and they are woven throughout job descriptions, training plans, and evaluation tools. And it is a way of really ensuring that we are consistently coming back to meet the key elements of that rubric that Nora laid out. Thank you.
So are we ready to go forward?
Just wanted to ask if before we get to the next step where we're going to do the scenario, are there any kind of maybe burning questions that people might want to ask? Do we just see if there's anything that if people are lost or people have a sense of where we're trying to go? Any burning questions that anybody has? All makes sense. Thank you, is what we've gotten. So, okay, so maybe it's time to go to the next slide, Nora.
Okay, we're going to go back to the scenario between the parent that called and the Parent Center staffer that's talking to them. And I want you to listen very carefully, use your good listening skills about as it relates to the ability of the parent to evaluate the effectiveness of their child's services. So ask yourself if the staffer's attitude demonstrates valuing the expertise of the family and the belief of the family's ability to make good decisions. Knowledge, which includes evidence-based practices, strategies to evaluate effectiveness of services and relative components, Andrew F. And then the skills, which is the ability to assess the parent's understanding of and ability to use information, understanding how to monitor progress, etc., through the goals. So I'm going to turn it back over to our role play folks. I imagine that many of you, if not all of you, have heard similar exchanges of what we have designed to be as a teaching scenario. So turning it back over to you.
I know this is very difficult to you, Ms. Jones.
Oh, you can call me Laura.
Thank you, Laura. Now, let me make sure I understood what you were saying. You've had concerns about your son, Tom, since first grade.
Yeah.
You shared your concerns with Tom's teachers and the principal, but, oh, I'm so sorry, Tim. But nothing has been done. He's in fourth grade now, and you're seeing that he's not making academic progress, and he's now having behavior challenges. Is that right?
Well, yeah. Yep.
So can I ask you a few questions?
Yes.
So you said that Tim, right?
Yes, Tim.
You said that Tim has a wonderful imagination, is very creative, and loves drawing and art. Is that still true?
Yeah, but really he's frustrated that, he doesn't even pay attention or complete assignments. And he just acts out. I can tell you how many times I've been called by the school to come get him.
So you're raising another issue, Laura. How many times has this happened?
What, me being called to the school?
Yes.
I think, I don't know, maybe 5 times, maybe 10 times. It feels like it happens every day, but you know, it happens a lot.
And what happens after you pick him up?
Oh, you know, they tell me he can come back to school next if he promises to behave himself. But once they didn't let him come back for 2 or 3 days.
That's just appalling. I can't believe they would violate the law that way. You know, Laura, I really wish you had called us before now. We really could have helped much more if you had called us before things got this far.
Well, I didn't know what to do.
Look, Laura, calm down. Do you have something to write with? I'm going to tell you just what you need to do. Tell me if I'm going too fast. The first thing you need to do.
Wait, I need, okay, I got something to write with.
Okay. The first thing you need to do is write a request for your child to be evaluated for special education. You need to send that to the person in your district who is responsible for special education. Now, we have a sample letter on our website, and I can send that to you. Once you write that letter, I want you to start pulling together all the information you have about Tim's struggles, and also all the times you tried to talk to someone to get him the help that he needed and what happened. We also have a great tool called the Positive Student Profile that I'm going to send you. That will help you focus not only on his struggles and challenges, but also on the things that he enjoys and can do well. That way you will be better prepared to share information during the evaluation, which I know they're going to do given what you have told me. And also you'll be better prepared for the meeting, the IEP meeting, but let's not talk about that now. We don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I just want to tell you, Laura, I know exactly what you're going through because it happened to me and my son. My school and district were just as non-compliant as your school and district, and I had to get tough in order to do something for my son. So don't worry, I know what you need to do, and I'm going to guide you every step of the way. Now, do you have any questions? Did you get everything down? Okay, good luck. And don't forget to call us if you have another call from the school telling you to come pick him up. Bye now.
But
Okay, so you listened carefully to this conversation between the parent and the Parent Center staff. Thinking about what you heard, what were some competencies that the staff are displayed? And you could put some of those in the chat and we'll go over those. So just take a second to, what positive competencies did that staff person display?
And can I just say, I'm looking at some of the chat, just so folks, what we're doing is the first time we modeled a call-in about staff competencies, and now we're modeling how one staff member chose to handle that call and looking at the competencies there.
So what did you hear that this person seemed to do well?
The staff was knowledgeable about special ed. Tracy says they did understand you requested an evaluation, not an IEP. They started out okay. Starbridge said she had some experience with her own family. Started out okay, summarized issues. Tammy says recommended tools. Shared resources. Shaya says poor guidance. Amanda had the knowledge but went too fast. Sally says provided examples of tools. And then Mary Jacobs said, needs a lesson on UPL.
Okay.
Absolutely, Mary.
So now, what competencies did the staffer not display?
And we're still referring to attitude, knowledge, and
skill. Yes.
Needs better listening skills. Didn't hear the family. Scaffolding, attitude, she was pushy. Gina says very directive in telling her what to do. Vomit reference from earlier. She was much too aggressive. She had a negative attitude towards school. not very skillful in delivering info in a way that the family could access, not empowering. Thank you, Christine. And Tracy said, did not assume good intentions. And then Lauren said, too much, too fast. And Iris said, got into the blame game. And Sandra says, she didn't even check to see if the family understood what she was saying. And she was judgmental. Flora needs to go away.
And I think earlier on, while we were still doing it, somebody said that the staff person was triggered. You know, that the stuff about being called to go pick up the child at the school was something that clearly triggered the parent-centered staffer, which, you know, when we have staff who have many of the experiences that the parents who call them have, that's not an uncommon thing to be triggered. But by using the competencies and, you know, including in training and doing scenarios like this, we can help staff learn how to avoid the bad things that happen from being triggered, which includes all of the different comments that people have made in the chat box.
Right.
So I just want to comment that how astute and brilliant you all are as participants to this session. I'm glad all the brilliant, astute people came to our session, truly. Okay, we're gonna go forward now and talk about having a little bit of a debrief. So of the attitude, skills, and knowledge, you talked about what did the staffer say or do based, demonstrated the preferred attitude based on the rubric. I think we've covered some of that and what could they have done differently. But unless there's some final pieces you want to put in there in the chat on this, if you think about it, as we're looking at hiring and onboarding and training our staff, talking about attitude is not generally considered explicit as we go about creating staff competencies. And it is, like Laura said before, it's considered a soft skill, but it is one of the harder ones. Right. And how we go on to create learning plans for staff around things such as attitude. It's often truly the least measured aspect of parent-centered work with families. Did anybody else want to add anything else in the attitude piece in the chat room about that we didn't cover before?
So Tammy says that Flora could have listened more empathetically to the family. And Mary Jacobs said the first learning plan would be around active listening.
Right. And as Nora said, it is much easier to train around knowledge and skills. Training around attitude can be a bit more difficult. One, it's a bit more difficult to recognize when you're hiring and a bit more difficult to help change people's attitude around working with families. And then Jenny says, we ask specific questions to get to attitude in our interviews.
Jenny, we'd love to have those, to be able to share those with others in our network, because as I said, that, and as we're saying, this is one of the tougher things to work on with staff. So are there any last things in the chat?
So Denise says, ask the family what they wanted to accomplish first. Help family prioritize their needs.
Yep.
Brilliant.
And then Tracy says, not our job to tell parents what to do to solve their problems. This is really hard sometimes. Sorry, Tracy, didn't see the rest of it. In order, we are to provide resources and information in order to guide parents in making their own choices and decisions. Exactly.
Okay, so the attitude, as we said, is by far the most challenging one to think about measuring and designing a training plan and so forth. But now we're going to talk a little bit about—
Nora, just 1 second. So I really like what Michelle said. I would think critical interview skills and assessment training would be good professional development as well. So really being able to, ask questions in ways that get to the bottom line. And Shay says, our last questions are, how does the parent think we can help, or what outcome would they like to see? And we have them rate their own knowledge based on a 1 to 5 scale. So that's great.
That's
Thank
an
you.
excellent suggestion. Yes.
Excellent.
Great. Thank you, Shay.
Okay. Moving forward, this is the debrief on, oh, we did attitude, debrief. Knowledge. Okay, what did the staffer say or do that demonstrated the preferred knowledge based on the rubric?
And again, put those in chat, please.
And if you want to let some ones of what they could have done or said differently, you can put that in now at this time too.
And I know some of you put them in a little bit earlier, but feel free to repeat them because you had really good answers.
Yes.
So Tammy said the person had knowledge in the process. Amanda said I was overwhelmed, laugh out loud, but the staffer knows SPED and the initial steps. She also knew to inform the parent to document. And Angela, she could have offered to send info about IDEA. Paula says she was eager to help. Sally, she knew what tools to provide to the family and had a knowledge of the law. And then now we get into the attitude piece. She provided in a way that was not beneficial to the family. Debbie said she understood the sequence of how process is supposed to work. Exactly. Michelle says the staffer was fast and loose and didn't allow any time to digest the information and work through a thoughtful process with the parent. Tammy has really nailed it when she said she should have slowed down and showed a little empathy.
I wanted to add back in when you're talking to the family, and this goes back to the rubric, and you don't have a lot of time to sort of assess the situation, it's still very important through good listening to sort of pinpoint where they are. And if they're just starting out on the process, you can help them understand that they will learn more and they will become more confident. If they're further along in the process, you can support where they're at and praise them and let them know that they've had some important foundational work that they've already done. So finding out where the parent is on that rubric can be used as a very positive tool too. Because part of all of this, as we know, is the family's confidence in taking on something that they've never taken on before, which may be, when people in positions of authority said no, and understanding what they could do about that. So, okay, anything else in the chat?
To Nora's point, using that rubric, you can also pinpoint what training opportunities are needed.
Yes.
Where's poor dear Flora? I really like Tammy says she could have started her with small manageable steps and then next steps. Pausing to check for understanding, because even though Flora knows obviously she has a lot of knowledge about special education and the process, she clearly doesn't have a lot of knowledge about how to make sure that that knowledge is shared with the parent in a way that's really useful to the parent.
Absolutely.
Yep. So are we ready to go on to the skills, or is there more?
Skill on.
Okay.
So Denise says, gave the parent too much information, perhaps scheduling a follow-up call and give more information in the next series. Christine says, try to find at least one thing they did that was positive and tell them.
Yes.
Mildred said she shared knowledge based on her own negative experience. Sandra, overwhelming the amount of information and the speed. Sue says, sometimes, even if the parent exhibits a low level of knowledge or confidence, we make a point of applauding them for seeking out information and help.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's go to the knowledge part.
Skill.
Skill, we just did knowledge.
Okay, out of order. So what did the staffer say or do that demonstrated the preferred skills based on the rubric? And we are covering elements of that in all of this, but you may have other comments about the skill level. So putting that in the chat.
Amanda would like us to repeat the question, please.
So this
it's
is
screen
about the skill level that we heard the staff person demonstrate in the scenario. Did you know, relating it to the rubric, for example, understanding, you know, knowing how to identify resources. I can't think of anything more right now, but what skills were demonstrated and what skills could have been done or said differently?
So we do have, Angela said that except for the exception of the child's name, she did seem to have the skill of listening. She did listen to the parent, especially before the parent started talking about the being sent home. Susan says empathize with the caller and commended her for calling for help. She seemed to have experience. She did identify some resources and techniques to meet the parent's concerns.
And I'll throw in there, at one point she used good paraphrasing skills. She was able to paraphrase a bit why the parent called in.
Yep.
Yes. So what could they have done or said differently that could have shown more skill? I did not mean to move that.
Scaffolding is one of the answers. Lauren says, slow down. Sally says, slow down a bit to break the information into smaller chunks.
And to that point about slowing down, I do think that that's so very important. As rushed and as stressed as we feel, and there's 5 more calls coming in, and I've got, you know, this, that, and the other thing to do, paying attention in the moment to that family that you're talking to is so truly important. They come to us for support and information, and we really need to be thoughtful in how we're spending the time with them to do it and to do it correctly. So yes, slowing down is so very critical. And Flora was a little rushed, a little bit.
Well, and I think Sally says, you know, she never checked for the parent's knowledge of the law and the process before diving in. And she rushed the ending of the conversation. She should have paused every now and then to make sure the parent truly understood the topic of the discussion. And she also could have scheduled a follow-up before the call ended instead of ending the call so abruptly. You know, she, you know, talking to or with the caller instead of talking at the caller, which she seemed to do, especially after that whole behavior thing was triggered. Slow down and check for understanding, break down the information, and ask what goal the parent had first.
And what the parent might, I go back to what the parent thinks their next step might be.
Right.
So
Amanda says homegirl was out to lunch. Nicole says never asked if the parent had any additional questions. And then pointing the parent to where they can find the resources in order to empower them, not necessarily sending the parent the documents.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, I say a very astute and brilliant group of people. Okay.
And I think, Nora, that one of the things that's really great about the Parent Empowerment Rubric and about the crosswalk is that it helps us take those things that we know and have learned through experience, but really
It codifies them.
Yes, it codifies and formalizes that and really makes it much clearer to staff what the expectations are, what's good practice. And also that we're not just looking to see that the parent got what they wanted, but also that the staffer helped the parent or the young person learn what they needed to know in order to do it themselves next time. So I think we have a lot of stuff that's swimming in our heads, but our attempt was to put this down on paper so that we can actually use it in a formal way in preparing and supporting and evaluating the work that we do with families and young people.
So
next slide.
Let's keep, so we're bringing it on home. So what you've seen are the components of the crosswalk, which consists of the parent capacity rubric, and then the related staff competencies and the measurement strategies. Okay, so you've got some tools now that we are attempting to sort of put in a framework that we can, as they said, codify it. We know we haven't hit everything in it. We don't have everything in it. So that's our next step is, are you interested in using this crosswalk as a test at your center? You could give us feedback about what worked or what didn't. We're soliciting 6 to 8 parent centers to try it out and looking for a mix of PTIs and CPRCs. Let us know if you're interested by putting your center in the chat box. And after testing it out and making the needed revisions with the rubric and the crosswalk, we're going to make it available to everybody. And TA will be using it. We'll make it available through your regional TA center.
Right. And we'll also provide support as you try it out.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Some centers, they may go, yeah, we got this. Some may say, I want to try it out, but I need some additional support. So we would be glad. Mary Jacobs says yes, Tammy yes, Kansas yes, and Denise says great. And by trying it out, we really mean that we, starting with the competencies, starting right from the beginning, looking at the rubric first, then looking at the competencies, finding anything that's missing, and then putting a plan in place that actually helps ensure that the staff are learning the competencies you have identified.
And as sort of the builders of this, we'd be really interested in the measurement of attitudes, any of the measurement tools, of being able to really refine those and make those more useful, particularly around attitude, but also with the skills and the knowledge. So we're putting this out to you all. We've gotten it this far. We'd really like you all to, to those folks that want to try it out, to do some thinking. What have we missed? What needs to be sort of tweaked? And it is by no means going to be, you must use this way. This is something that we're offering out there that we hope will move the parent centers and their staff development and the work they do with families just up to the next level.
Right. We've had several people enter into the chat. I know our time is running short. We will reach back out to you for those who said you will. There are a couple who want us to email out the scenario scripts.
And I think our session goes until 3:55.
So we actually have 10 minutes.
So we have 10 minutes for questions.
Yeah.
We can email out the scenario. Jerry says, are you going to provide a role play of a TA called Done Well? We'd love it if you would do that, and we could share that along with the call of a scenario that is done partially well. Flora was not completely without good attitude, knowledge, or skills. So let's go to the next slide and see if we have any questions, because we have good time for questions or comments. Other
We're
than
amazed that we have the time.
Well, we worked very hard.
Yeah.
So Diana says we can mail out the scenarios.
the scenario, I guess we only did one.
Scenario,
Well,
that's
part 1
right.
and 2. Yeah.
Part 1 and 2, correct. And then I saw something about in-source. So let me scroll back up and find that comment.
The person is with in-source but not in a decision position,
There
but
you go.
love this.
Yep.
So this is very useful, not in a decision position, but like to have the scenarios. We can send them out to everybody who registered for this session.
And I'm curious, since people are asking for scenarios.
What, Laura?
Since people, I'm sorry, I'm hearing some background noise.
Yes.
Since people are asking for the scenario, are scenarios something that might be helpful to centers as a training tool? Oh, and the new ED of Peak is on. Paula says yes.
So New Jersey lost you, huh? And you went out to Colorado.
He did.
Yep.
Right. So if scenarios would be helpful as a training tool, we can look into some of those as well.
This is Carmen. It seems that maybe the scenarios would be good on video, not just in writing, because I think it's picking up on the tone and the speed and all that is also really helpful for people to look at. So it might be something we might want to do.
It's a great idea. It would pick up body language as well.
Yes. Even though, and that's part of the, the supervisor observation piece on the body language, a little bit tougher these days with the not sitting in a cubicle next to each other. But I think, taking a look at how scenarios can be used in all sorts of staff training. Laura shared when we were doing this that they will go into Salesforce and they'll take one of the cases of working with the families and they sort of unpack it and they work through it and they have the opportunity, I think, Laura, right, for folks to offer suggestions and alternative ways that might have been responded to, et cetera, et cetera. So there's no one way to do this. One size pantyhose never fit anybody, right? But as we're looking at this as supervisors working with our staff and we can teach just about anybody on IDEA. That's a given. We're not lawyers, nor do we play them on TV, but it's that.
Yourself, Nora. I'm a lawyer.
Okay, I'm not a lawyer, nor do I play one on TV, but it is that the skills and the attitude part that makes the challenge of onboarding and even hiring staff. You could actually embed some of the stuff about attitude into your interview questions, to start sort of screening from the get-go instead of getting a long way down the road and go, oh, we've got some work to do here.
Does anybody have lots of people like the idea of video, so that's great. Does anybody have any questions?
Or something that we totally missed or totally, went in a wrong direction?
Lots of recommendations for video, so I guess Flora and Laura are going to be having some more conversations.
And then Carolyn just said, we look forward to welcome you back. Let's go back. I don't want to miss that one.
Okay, is it time to head back to the?
For Rosemary Allen, hang on.
We still have 10 minutes before we
still have time. Excuse me for popping in. I just wanted to share the link because some folks were having challenges with the links earlier.
Oh,
no, I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can actually see faces and the chat room.
So one of the things that came up in the chat, this is Carmen, is that the session did not address, but certain people pointed to it, unauthorized practice of law. So maybe there should be some sort of connection again to the training related to unauthorized practice of law also.
Very good.
That might be helpful.
Yep.
just a link to it or something.
Yeah.
Well,
And in fact, we actually have scenarios in that training as well. So
but we put it in the skills and knowledge piece too.
yes, yeah,
Mhm.
yes,
Yeah.
yeah. We tried to incorporate as much as we could think of, but again, we hope that when you have more time to review the crosswalk, that you will, whether or not you are one of the centers that has volunteered to pilot it, we hope that you will share your ideas on what we missed or what isn't clear to you, because the purpose is to make this as useful and easily usable a tool as possible. And you can help us do that. You certainly will help us do that if you're one of the parent centers that volunteers, because you'll try it out, and by trying it out, you'll learn a lot of things that will be helpful. But even if you can just look at it and see things that we missed or that we didn't, that's not clear enough, that would be also very helpful.
And since we have 4 minutes, I think one of my jobs is to remind people to fill out the evaluation for this session in your app once this session is over. So please remember to fill out the evaluation. It's useful for us. Lauren suggests maybe an infographic or a flow chart. Now that's interesting.
I think that's a great idea.
And if Lauren has an idea how to do it well, me playing in Excel with the rubric was like hot stuff at the time. But yeah, I agree. Something that could be maybe posted on a desktop when you're talking to a family, so that you could refer to it really easily.
Yeah,
that would be awesome.
And then there was an interesting comment from Sheila Likens about updating their office space to make it more trauma friendly to help with intakes. That could be more stressful. So I don't know if Sheila wants to, Shay wants to say something more about that, what they did to their space. Or not.
Shay, if you'd like to unmute, you would just need to request it. I'll try to find you on the participant list, but if you'd like to unmute, if you request it, then I'll know where you are. It's a lot of, we have over 85 people here, so I'm trying to find you.
Well, while we're doing that, I just want to thank everybody for coming to this session, for listening to us, and for being patient as we work through some of the technical pieces. This is like the general session, and then the wonderful, amazing keynoter that we're going back to here, that everybody will just get so much out of it. But on behalf of Flora, Laura, and Nora, I just want to say thanks for coming and sitting through this and being really patient as we had somebody with fumble fingers trying to advance slides when they were going backwards, etc. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everybody, and for all of your great input throughout the entire workshop. We really got great feedback, so thank you very much.
And I wasn't kidding when I said we had, a really brilliant and astute group of participants. I know we got some smart folks here, and that's why we're so happy you joined us. So
Thanks again to everyone.
And thank you, Carmen, for moderating.
Yes, thank you.
And
If
for
only.
Michelle and Amy and everyone behind the scenes. Thank you very much.
Yes. Woohoo! Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Well, short break before the next